Good evening and welcome to our 2022 Free Speech America Gala. We're glad you can join us for this virtual event. Tonight we're celebrating the Media Institute and the vital work it does to advance a competitive media environment, promote freedom of speech, and support excellence in journalism. This evening we will recognize two distinguished individuals who have devoted their careers to furthering these fundamental values. We're also celebrating Free Speech Week, which is going on right now. Every year during the third week of October, Free Speech Week recognizes our First Amendment guarantees of free speech and a free press. It's a celebration with no partisan, political, or ideological agenda. The Media Institute created Free Speech Week 17 years ago to help all Americans appreciate and celebrate these precious freedoms. The Media Institute is grateful to our gala sponsors who made tonight's virtual festivities possible. We thank our platinum sponsor, Comcast, NBC Universal. We thank our gold sponsors, NCTA, the Internet and Television Association, and Verizon. And we thank our silver sponsors for their generous support. And many thanks to Beasley Media Group and Wilkinson Barker Nauer LLP for their video salutes. We extend our special thanks to the National Association of Broadcasters for providing our Washington recording location. This evening, our sponsors are enjoying dinner wine provided by the Knightsbridge Wine Shop through the generosity of John and Kim Taylor. Thank you, John and Kim. Now we invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy tonight's Free Speech America Gala. Thank you for helping us salute our honorees, and thank you for supporting the Media Institute.
Hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. My name is Rick Kaplar, and I'm the president of the Media Institute. And what a pleasure for me to welcome you here tonight to our virtual Free Speech America Gala. We're coming to you this evening from the National Association of Broadcasters building on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. We'd like to thank Curtis Leggett and all of our friends here at the NAB who've graciously invited us to use this beautiful conference facility to bring you this evening's gala. The Media Institute, as many of you know, is a nonprofit foundation that pursues three important goals: sound communications policy, a strong First Amendment, and excellence in journalism. We pursue these goals through a variety of programs and activities. One of the best known is our Communications Forum Luncheon Series in Washington, which brings together government policymakers and industry executives 8 times per year. After 2 years of virtual luncheons because of the pandemic, we started getting back together in person this summer, and we look forward to being in person next year. We're active on many other fronts as well. Our Media and Communications Policy blog publishes timely articles on the First Amendment and other media topics. In the last 12 months, we've participated in more than 24 Friend of the Court briefs with other media groups in support of journalists' First Amendment rights and media access to public information. Our Digital Media Center, or DMC, has been active under the direction of our distinguished fellow Stuart Brotman, who's working on a paper right now that we'll release in December on streaming and cable television. Our DMC has partnered with a leading digital research company again this year to support a number of conferences on the future of video. There's much more ahead for our Digital Media Center. And of course, the Media Institute orchestrates and promotes Free Speech Week, a nationwide celebration that's going on right now, October 17th to the 23rd. We created this event in 2005, and it just keeps getting bigger and better. Right now, I'd like to thank all of our financial contributors, and especially our Gala sponsors. It's only because of your support that we've been able to conduct the many activities I've just described. Your support of our virtual Gala tonight is extremely important to our financial well-being. In fact, we wouldn't be able to keep the Institute going without a successful Gala. So we're extremely grateful to you, our sponsors, for supporting us tonight. And we're especially grateful to our platinum sponsor, Comcast NBC Universal. We thank our good friends there, and we appreciate the vote of confidence that all of you have given us. I'd also like to thank the Nice Bridge Wine Shop in Northbrook, Illinois, and our board member, John Taylor, and his wife, Kim, for donating the dinner wine that was delivered to our sponsors in the DC area tonight. Thank you, John and Kim. Our thanks as well to Dave Arland and the team at Arland Communications for producing tonight's event. I'm grateful to my colleague, Susanna Coto, for all the work she's put into the Gala. And many thanks to Anna Yan and Kimberly Falkenhagen for their help with graphics and promotion. As I mentioned, we're right in the middle of Free Speech Week, and that's what we're celebrating tonight. We're very honored to have two distinguished awardees, Lester Holt and Ken Burns. Each of them has worked in his own way, whether it be in the field of journalism or documentary filmmaking, to embody and promote freedom of speech, a robust press, and a society where truth can be told every single evening on the nightly news, and in brilliant documentaries airing on PBS that take years to produce. We thank Lester and Ken and their presenters, Harry Smith and Patrick Butler. And our special thanks to FCC Commissioner Nathan Simington for being our featured speaker. We're honored that they're all here with us tonight, and we're grateful for everything they do to further the cause of free expression in a vibrant media industry. And of course, we're honored to welcome our distinguished Master of Ceremonies, Mr. Dick Wiley. Dick is a co-founder of Wiley Ryan LLP, the law firm with one of the largest communications practices in the United States. In the 1970s, he was general counsel, a commissioner, and then chairman of the Federal Communications Commission. Since then, he's been one of Washington's most highly respected attorneys. And of course, Dick has served with distinction for many years as the Media Institute's chairman of the board. Dick is a real inspiration to me in terms of his leadership and his incredible commitment to the Institute. I'd like to share a little historical note with you. Tonight marks the 30th anniversary of these Media Institute galas. We held our first dinner in 1992, and the recipient of our very first Freedom of Speech Award that evening was Dick Wiley. Congratulations, Dick. It's been a great 30 years. And thank you for setting such a high bar for all the Freedom of Speech Award recipients who have followed you. It is now my honor and my privilege to turn the program over to this wonderful friend and colleague. Ladies and gentlemen, our Master of Ceremonies, the Chairman of the Board, Mr. Dick Wiley.
Well, Rick, thank you for those all too kind remarks. And in turn, let me congratulate you on your truly superlative management of the Institute. Ladies and gentlemen, our featured speaker for tonight is FCC Commissioner Nathan Simington. Before joining the agency in 2020, he was a senior advisor to NTIA. And previously in the private sector, he practiced law for two major firms and also was a senior counsel to Brightstar Corporation, an international mobile device provider where he negotiated telecommunications transactions for some 20 countries. The commissioner is a graduate of Michigan Law School and also holds degrees from Rochester and Lawrence University. And here are some fun facts about our distinguished guest. He is a classical violinist, a native of Saskatchewan, Canada, a naturalized U.S. citizen, and now a resident of Northern Virginia, along with his wife and 3 children. So let's welcome this very effective member of the FCC, Commissioner Simington.
Thank you, Dick, for that kind introduction. It's my great pleasure and signal honor to speak with you all tonight. There's no industry in America like broadcast media. No other business sits at the intersection of so many different industries. No other business has the same locally oriented mission of service. No other business enjoys the same level of public confidence. No other business serves the same critical public safety functions. And no other business is tasked to accomplish all that broadcast accomplishes and still abide by the many rules that reflect the earned trust placed in it by the American people. And yet, broadcasters manage it all. Broadcasters create and distribute news content. That's what we all know them for, right? And that's what some of us grew up on. Broadcasters were with us to celebrate our national triumphs, to inform us of urgent events breaking just beyond our stoops, and to solemnly mourn our collective losses. Broadcasters haven't just told us the news, they've brought it into our homes and helped us make sense of it. Broadcasters have not just informed us, they've entertained us too. From live and local sports, to nationally distributed sitcoms, to a perfectly curated playlist for an evening drive. Broadcasters have helped to shape family evenings and work conversations by water coolers. And now, as content viewing and listening has become more and more asynchronous, broadcasters are still contributing to the national conversation through locally created content distributed globally online. Sometimes that content is hard-hitting, on-the-ground journalism. Sometimes it's the simple joy of a dancing weather reporter. But none of it would happen without broadcasters and newsrooms across America. Across America, that's the difference, isn't it? Broadcasters work across the country. Newsrooms dot the American landscape because the work of broadcast is local, and it needs to be. There's no alternative. No other organization can do the work of local broadcasters today, because no other organization can be where they are and do what they do. No one but local broadcasters can send a stringer to City Hall to report on local political corruption, produce a high school football game, and run a charity food drive all in the same day. There's no monthly subscription for that. And it isn't just supporting local communities with reporting, it's coordinating emergency response to disasters. When the power goes out and tornado sirens blare, no one is reaching for their hand-cranked cell phone or flipping to a media app. Broadcasters have the knowledge, the technical capability, and in fact, the legal duty to guide the American public through disasters. And this duty, they not only meet but exceed every day. Broadcast is not a nice to have. Broadcast is not something we can merely select from a menu of media options. Broadcast is woven into the fabric of this country, its heritage, its culture, and its daily function in a way that no other commercial enterprise can claim. And it is under threat. You know, if you'd listened to everything I just mentioned, you might be forgiven for thinking I was talking about local newspapers, because indeed, so much of the same could be said of print newspapers, especially in their essentially local nature and their public-minded mission. And yes, that's true. Local newspapers have long been, and in many communities, still are an indispensable public institution. But in many more communities, they are not. And why? It isn't that the American public no longer wants or needs reliable information. In fact, we need it now perhaps more than ever before. No, local newspapers are no longer relied on in many communities because they went out of business. And most of that even was simply about dollars and cents. Print is a lower margin business than digital, and many Americans these days prefer screens to pages. Things changed. Fortunately, many print outlets have adapted. Others have not been as fortunate. Undoubtedly contributing to the decline of local print media was the cross-ownership rule. Originally drafted for a time of tycoons and press barons, the cross-ownership rule prevented media magnates and school superintendents alike from owning an AM radio station and daily plain dealer in the same rural town and employing people in the same newsroom. The cross-ownership rule didn't kill local print newspapers all by itself. Among other things, local papers are still here, but it certainly hasn't helped. The agency where I work was built in a different era, with very different commercial and cultural realities. And though we've done a great job keeping up with the times, we have to make sure that the patina of legacy rules doesn't turn into rust. We have to change with the times, and these times are in some cases very tough for broadcasters. The Commission can help this vital public good with its rules and must do so wherever it can to fulfill its public service mission. This means reasonable waiver requests should be granted for owners looking to preserve failing stations in small markets. This means that legacy reporting rules should be modernized or even eliminated when the purpose that they serve no longer remains clear. And it means that the Commission must do whatever it can to reduce the burden of fees on the smallest broadcasters, who sometimes struggle to pay their very electric bills. Don't get me wrong, broadcasters are still creating, innovating, and even growing, and there's much to be excited about. New broadcast technologies are enabling improved viewing and listening experiences. Broadcasters are using new infrastructure to better serve their communities through localized content delivery. And broadcasters are getting smart about collecting and using data to improve customer experiences and their own value as a marketing partner. All of this will help broadcasters to compete in the unified media marketplace of today. But these innovations, while exciting, are not what I'm most excited about for broadcasting. I view the innovative use of broadcast channels for delivery of data to be a true game changer. For the first time, television broadcasters can use their antennas to transmit not just things we see and hear to our screens, but data that we can download to our devices. The possibilities are dazzling. Broadcasters can send updates to software that runs smart homes or autonomous vehicles. They can support at-home learning in rural school districts. And yes, they can even download the new episode of HBO's House of the Dragon for you. And just as television broadcasters have made great technical strides, I look forward to partnering with AM and FM broadcasters as they pioneer their own new broadcast technologies and standards. Data will bolster the future of broadcast because broadcast must have a future. With its essentially local nature and its fundamentally irreplaceable position as a public safety sentinel, the American people simply cannot do without it. We cannot and must not permit broadcasters to slacken in their duty to serve the public, but for broadcasters to discharge that sacred obligation, we must help them to flourish. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. Looking forward to watching the rest of tonight's proceedings with you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we turn now to the awards portion of our evening's program. And to present our eminent recipient of the American Horizon Award, I want to introduce a good friend of mine and so many others in this audience. Patrick Butler, the President and CEO of America's Public Television Station. Pat has served in this important leadership position for nearly 12 years, and previously he spent 18 years as Senior Vice President of the Washington Post Company. And before entering the private sector, Pat was an advisor and assistant to Howard Baker in both his roles as Senate Majority Leader and Chief of Staff to President Reagan. Pat has been a longtime supporter and frequent speaker to the Media Institute. And Pat, it's really a pleasure to have you with us again tonight.
Thank you, Dick. It's my great honor this evening to present the American Horizon Award to the legendary filmmaker Ken Burns. It's been my honor to know Ken for more than 30 years. As chairman of the Public Programs Committee of the National Endowment for the Humanities, I recommended the largest grant in the history of the endowment to help Ken complete his masterpiece, The Civil War. We served together as executive producers of a documentary on the Medal of Honor, and I've been privileged to serve as a member of the board of the Better Angels Society, supporting the work of Ken Burns and promising young filmmakers following his tradition. And of course, we share a deep commitment to public television, which has been the home to all of Ken's films for more than 40 years. It may well be that no one person has been more singularly responsible for the success of public television than the man we honor tonight. For millions of people, Ken Burns embodies public television in the quality of his productions, in the rigorous standards of scholarship that inform his work, and in the fearless devotion to the truth, the whole truth, in the stories of America he tells so well. The breadth of those stories spans the Brooklyn Bridge and the Vietnam War, Mark Twain and Muhammad Ali, the Dust Bowl and the Gettysburg Address, Thomas Jefferson and Jackie Robinson, baseball and Shakers and suffragettes. This astonishing range, and there are so many more of his subjects to be celebrated, is all in the service of explaining America to Americans. It is not always a pretty picture. For all of our abundant strengths and revolutionary ideals, we are not and have never been a perfect people. But what Ken makes clear in each of his productions is that the real greatness and glory of America lies not in our perfection, but in our striving to be more perfect, to confront our flaws, our shortcomings, our sins, humbly and honestly, and to try to overcome them courageously and relentlessly. This is the essence of his work, the substance of his surpassing contribution to our national life, all grounded in the abiding confidence that, as scriptures say, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." With such confidence, the American horizon will always be bright, and it is altogether fitting and proper that we present the American Horizon Award tonight to the man who makes us all want to be better than we are, the incomparable Ken Burns.
Thank you, Pat. Your friendship has been a tremendous gift. Your commitment to a free press and your leadership in public media, an inspiration. Good evening, everyone. I'm honored to accept this extraordinary recognition. Thank you to the Media Institute for the award and for the work you do. I am humbled. Free speech, a free media is the foundation upon which this country was built and rebuilt many times over. Mark Twain said, "It is by the goodness of God that in our country we have those three unspeakably precious things: freedom of speech, freedom of conscience, and the prudence never to practice either of them." Fortunately, you prove him wrong. I'd also like to thank the Media Institute Chair, Dick Wiley, and President Rick Kaplar. And I'd like to acknowledge the company I keep tonight, the recipient of the Freedom of Speech Award, Lester Holt, and our keynote speaker, FCC Commissioner Nathan Simington. I've been told that my colleagues and I are in the business of waking the dead. We have many tools that help us do that, but mostly we're able to bring people from the past back to life through their words. They speak to us across time. The greatest invention of all time is not the computer or the cell phone or other devices we now find it impossible to live without today. It is the printing press, the machine that allowed our ancestors to share their words with increasingly more and more people. It is the newspaper, the magazine, the book. It is our right to speak freely without fear of censorship or attack, and to challenge those with power. But words and the freedom to articulate them are not safe, even when constitutionally protected, when so many of us do not share a vocabulary anchored in facts. We must be tireless in protecting the First Amendment, something you all do so well. But equally, we must speak about what we share, forever reminding people, even those we disagree with, especially those we disagree with, that our heritage of reason, facts, research, reporting, and science is critical to our democracy. Without a common vocabulary, a shared belief that facts matter, truth matters, even a free press will soon be on life support. As many of you know, I just completed a film with my colleagues Lynn Novick and Sarah Botstein on the U.S. and the Holocaust. It was not easy for foreign correspondents to report what was really happening in Germany during this period. Sources were often too frightened to talk. Reporters were reluctant to quote witnesses by name for fear of betraying them to the secret police. The Nazis controlled the German press and exhorted foreigners to, quote, report on affairs in Germany without attempting to interpret them, close quotes. What that meant, the American journalist William L. Shirer wrote in his diary, is that we should jump on the bandwagon of Nazi propaganda. But the best American journalists did write about what was going on then, however much the Nazi government tried to hide it. Given that, why didn't we respond sooner? The media, while not always front page, were certainly covering what was happening in Europe. What we saw then and what we see today is that a free press alone, and don't get me wrong, it is hugely important, is severely hindered when there isn't a shared history, a civic language that recognizes that what we have in common as a people trumps what divides us. We need to celebrate the First Amendment and free speech and a free and independent media, but we also need to work harder to make sure that people engage with the press and can distinguish between fact and fiction. I have long thought that history is something we can gather around together, no matter how contested it may be. The novelist Richard Powers reminded us in his wonderful book, The Overstory, that no argument, regardless of how good, can change someone else's mind. The only thing that can do that is a good story. The battles we see today in communities around the country are not about the past. They are about the present and a largely nostalgic view of the past. We must come to the defense of our teachers across the country and make sure that they are free to do what they do best, teaching our kids about a very complicated country where the struggle to bring our values to life, including our First Amendment rights, is our shared heritage. We need to become more vocal about the good that is America, but we can only do so if we talk about the bad and talk about it together. I think the crisis of democracy we face today is as great as any crisis we've confronted in our country's history. Every civic organization, every group that is dedicated to upholding the values we cherish must come together to defend the right of a free press and the right of free speech. But we must do it in a way that equally educates and engages, so we have shared stories that allow us to do this together. Thank you for your time tonight. Thank you for this wonderful honor.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Brian Tremont, the managing partner of Wilkinson Barker Nauer. We're honored to sponsor tonight's Media Institute event to celebrate two masters of media, Lester Holt and Ken Burns, who've done so much to champion free speech and excellence in journalism. And as a fan and frequent viewer of your work, I'm honored to congratulate you.
And now to present the outstanding winner of the Freedom of Speech Award, I am privileged to introduce a very well-known and respected television journalist, Harry Smith. Throughout his distinguished media career, Mr. Smith has been variously a television anchor, host, commentator, and reporter for, among others, NBC, MSNBC, and CBS. And among his impressive assignments, our guest hosted CBS's morning news programs for some 17 years, and after joining NBC in 2011, he has been a frequent participant in the Today Show and also the network's nightly primetime news program. Ladies and gentlemen, let's greet this celebrated television newsman and personality, Harry Smith.
Good evening. I'm Harry Smith, a reporter for NBC News, and proud to say I work with Lester Holt. Some years back when I worked at CBS, I used to cover a lot of breaking news, big stories, disasters, earthquakes, hurricanes. More than a couple of times, I found myself on the same plane with people from NBC News, and with them, inevitably, was Lester. Lester has that thing in him, what Mike Wallace once described to me as this. Harry, he said, I'm like the Dalmatian dog at the firehouse. When the alarm goes off, I jump on the truck, no matter what. That's Lester. Just this year, he's reported from Ukraine, from Poland, Uvalde, Texas, from Highland Park, Illinois. He goes where the story is, always has. I first met Lester when he worked at WBBM in Chicago, and I was on the morning news at CBS. Lester was famous at the time because he was among the real-life reporters featured in the movie version of The Fugitive, starring Harrison Ford and Tommy Lee Jones. Yup, that was him, mustache and all. Lester, though, was that local guy who stood out. He stood out because you knew he knew the news was not all about him. And that's what he took with him when NBC and MSNBC brought him aboard. You could see that in the presidential debate he moderated just a couple of years ago. I personally have lived in mortal fear of ever having that job. Too big, too much pressure, too much at stake. A near impossible task to be truly fair and balanced. Other than his really good suit, you could not tell if Lester was grilling two presidential candidates or people vying for the local school board. He'd done his homework. He was thorough, did not shy away from an issue, and treated the candidates and the audience with respect. We are fortunate to have a man like Lester as the anchor. Someone asked me about Lester a couple of years ago. I said, trust is our most important currency in this profession. Lester is rich in that regard. We don't doubt a word that comes out of his mouth. He takes his work seriously, no doubt, but also plays bass in the newsroom pickup band. Its personnel, a crazy salad of editors and producers and the like, some infamous in the building, but not famous like Lester. He doesn't front the band, he's in the back, next to the drummer. The spotlight just is not important to him, except when it comes to issues of justice. For a network-wide series called Justice for All, the man was embedded in the Louisiana State Prison in Angola for 3 days. I have been there, and I honestly can't comprehend that he did that. But understanding the story completely and being fully committed to that were what put him there, and that's rare. He's interviewed all the big shots, but I think he prefers speaking to people who are experiencing the news. That's his job, honorably and humbly serving the public, giving voice to the voiceless. You might not know that Lester's father was in the Air Force, made a career of it. When your parent spends most of his adult life serving the country, it teaches you something. Lester knows what's at stake. Truth is no trivial matter. It is not a commodity to be sold and shape-shifted to suit an audience. No, for Lester, the First Amendment is Scripture, and that Scripture is sacred.
Harry, I don't even know where to start after an introduction like that. To say I am touched and honored is an understatement. Folks, you should know that those nice things that Harry just said about me could easily apply to himself as well, minus the part about the bass playing and the fugitive. Those are mine. Harry, though, is a gentleman and a friend, and I am proud to know him. You know, what makes this job so special is working with people I consider Hall of Famers like Harry, who bring it every day and elevate our profession. It's my privilege to lead this amazing team. I want to acknowledge and congratulate my fellow honoree, Ken Burns. Ken, you've done so much to bring to life this country's history and its journey, and it's a privilege to share the stage, or in this case, digital space, with you. I would also like to recognize FCC Commissioner Nathan Simington for taking the time to speak this evening. Let me also, of course, thank the Media Institute for this high honor. You know, it's important that we recognize the foundations of a free, democratic society, and certainly a free and independent press is a vital pillar, grounded in our freedom of speech. And so I am grateful for what you do and your commitment to this basic right. But of course, we go about our business in a world that freedom of speech is bandied about in ways we might not once have imagined, where the question is not just over whether we can yell fire in a crowded theater, but now what you can scream from a social media post or a TV pundit's chair. But I'm not going to spend these few minutes on woe is us, but rather on what we can do to stimulate civility and helpful dialogue. We all know by now that truth is under assault and gaslighting has become a convenient shield against facts and reality, capable of undermining what we in the free and independent press stand for. But if we are going to examine threats to free speech, we need to examine those self-inflicted threats. How often do we self-censor because the cost of sticking one's head up can be social decapitation? And that puts at risk our ability to have debate. I'm not talking about shouting matches or Twitter shaming or gaslighting arguments. I'm talking about informed debate, about issues, expressions, and exchanges of ideas and policies. A willingness to listen all of which I believe, and some might say naively, we are still capable of having, even in these divided times. There are still those who just want to know more, people not of the extreme, but of the curious, where the seeds of responsible dialogue can find fertile ground outside the verbal killing fields of conspiracy theories and threats. But it means we must find a way past the fear of expression, the fear of being honest, the fear of public shaming, and the fear of saying sometimes, I don't know. There are intelligent conversations to be had. And as a network evening news program, appointment television for so many, we are in a unique position to foster those conversations and inform. When I'm anchoring the broadcast, I often think to myself, guessing which story will be the one that folks are talking about around the kitchen table during the commercial break or after the show. For the record, I don't consider myself naive. I understand emotions are really the X factor in all this, in our national dialogue. We can't underestimate emotions' power to stifle broader reasoning. But as journalists, we have to believe there is another side to this national chasm and aspire to be part of rebuilding the bridge. Freedom of speech can be more than freedom to be the loudest voice on the soapbox. It can also be freedom to listen, freedom to be critical thinkers. That is why I am a big advocate of news literacy efforts that are aimed at helping, especially younger viewers, to process what they're hearing and seeing and recognizing mis- and disinformation for what it is. Promoting critical thinking skills can be the safety net of a free and independent press. Part of our mission each day as a broadcast is to elevate the national dialogue, of course centered on facts, but also on stories that take you there and offer perspective, stories that, if we can lower our shields just a bit, might make people think hard about their worldview, or at least understand the complexity of issues and why others may think differently. That's why, as Harry noted in the introduction, I spent a few days at the Louisiana maximum security prison at Angola, not as a stunt, but to expand the understanding of what mass incarceration looks like and its impact. I didn't want to tell people what to think, but what to consider in this case as we weighed crime and punishment. Journalists are granted a unique platform to inform and enlighten. Sure, we can report on those food fights or live in the eye candy of the viral spat of the day, but the issue we face today, the issues are really hard. War in Ukraine, nuclear threats, immigration reform, COVID policies, challenges to democracy. They demand our attention. We have to be part of a solution. Thank you again to the Media Institute for this award, and thanks to all of you for logging in and listening. I hope it'll spark a conversation. Good night.
Good evening. I'm Caroline Beasley. It's truly an honor and a privilege to be part of tonight's celebration as we pay tribute to Ken Burns and Lester Holt for their unwavering dedication and commitment to free speech. On behalf of the entire Beasley Media Group family, congratulations to the Media Institute on yet another outstanding event.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our gala program. And in closing, let me congratulate once again our outstanding award recipients and express appreciation to our distinguished speaker, our presenters, and indeed to all of you for being with us. Ladies and gentlemen, good night.